Hello, everyone. My name is Sean Van Besouw, and I'm currently a sophomore at West Virginia University, and I'm majoring in political science. My research revolves around the effects of different state policies on rising inequality and rising costs in the United States as a whole. I'm doing this research with the political science department and with the help of my mentor, Dr. William Franco. This research is currently ongoing, so we do not have the exact outcomes yet, but we're currently in the process of correlating policies, and we're making strong progress towards the goals. To begin, as we've seen through the past several decades, inequality has been rising rapidly in the United States, due in a large part to rising costs in several areas. These areas we'll be specifically looking at are housing, healthcare, childcare, and education. The four areas have been pinpointed as areas where middle class and lower class Americans are getting hit the hardest in this affordability crisis that has been going on recently. Over this time, some states have been doing better than others when it comes to controlling and stopping the rise in inequality and unaffordability. The goal of this research is to examine the state policies which combat this, which states have been effective, and which states have not been effective. Once doing this, we'll look at which policies specifically have been used to be effective at combating these problems. Next, we'll discuss how the residents in each state compared to each other in these four aspects, and which specific policies have been the most beneficial. Overall, the expected outcome is that states that pass wider-reaching distributive policies will likely have better outcomes regarding inequality than states that did not. Our goal from this research is to shape future policy in order to model the most successful policies which have been used recently to combat these problems. If successful, these future policies will be more proactive in combating inequality, as well as combating the affordability crisis that's currently happening. If we look in the background information category, we can see a chart for three of the four categories: healthcare, higher education, and housing. Each of these costs have gone way up to the consumer between 1997 and 2019. For healthcare in 1997, the average consumer paid $2,901 as compared to 2019, the average consumer paid $7,367. This is a massive increase, and increases in categories like this is largely what's contributing to the rising inequality in the US. Next, we look at the higher education statistics, which went from $207 to $587. Again, this is an increase of more than double, which is really hurting consumers in the US. And finally, in the housing category, we can see the average consumer paid $3,700 in 1997 and $8,168 in 2019. Again, this is rising faster than income is rising, which means that consumers are paying way more now as compared to how much they did in 1997. Now, if we look into the middle area, we can see that there are two graphs. The graphs for healthcare consumer expenditure by state and housing consumer expenditure in both states. Both of these graphs look at the per capita consumer expenditure in these categories. This means how much one person would spend on the specific area in 1 year. In the per capita healthcare and housing consumer expenditure by states, the graphs out all 50 states plus Washington, D.C., as well as the US average at the end. This is basically what the expenditure was in 1997 for a person and what it was in 2019 for a person. And you can see that the orange 2019 data is much higher than the blue 1997 data, as was already explained earlier in the research. Looking at the first graph, for healthcare costs, the states that had the highest rise in per capita expenditures were Alaska, South Dakota, and New Hampshire, while the three states with lowest increasing expenditures were Utah, South Carolina, and Alabama. Currently, we are in the process of correlating different variables such as population, health statistics, and other things, and then obviously the policies. Because there are so many variables involved aside from just the policy itself, this is a very difficult and long process, so we hope to correlate these together soon to see which factors lead to the highest rises in healthcare consumer expenditures and which factors lead to lower rises in expenditures over time. Now, looking at the per capita housing consumer expenditure by state, we can see similar statistics where the 2019 expenditures are much higher than the 1997 expenditures. The states or districts with the highest increase were Washington, D.C., Hawaii, and Maryland. Meanwhile, the states with the lowest increase are Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Indiana. Again, we're currently in the process of correlating this data, but a major factor that is easy to see is housing expenditure data rises quickly in more dense areas compared to rural states. However, we're trying to find ways in which different policies also affect on this, because obviously states with less land will be more expensive for housing, therefore policy is even more important in these states. As for our results and analysis, we have found both expected and unexpected data so far in our research. While there is a clear correlation with density in cities for housing, there's no such correlation that appears clear to the eye in healthcare, except Alaska, which is a special case due to its remoteness. considering that the 3 highest and lowest rising states are all mostly rural. We have big plans for this research in the future, as stated earlier, and we are hoping that this research will be successful in shaping future policy to combat rising costs and rising inequality. We are looking forward to reviewing and looking at the best policies to combat the costs in these 4 areas, and these policies that we find to be the strongest will be recommended to legislators for future use. Thank you everyone for looking at and listening to my presentation. If you have any comments or questions, I would like to hear them below. Thank you.